Say hi, Rachel.
Hi, Rachel.
Say hi, Poet.
Hi, Poet.
Say hi, Elodie. Hey, guess what? Diabetic had a baby. And he's alive.
It's true, and he's healthy.
And he doesn't have diabetes that we know of.
He has a higher chance, but right now he's good.
Yeah. But like, yeah.
Yeah.
So Rachel,
Yes.
was it harder to get pregnant because you're diabetic?
Well, he was kind of an accident. He was a whoops.
Oops-a-doops.
But as far as like actually being pregnant, in the very beginning, I was told like to be careful and not to get too excited because I was more likely to have a miscarriage.
Were you ever told, like, growing up or like in your teens or anything that like it would be harder for you to have kids or anything?
I was told when I was 17 that I couldn't have kids at all.
Okay.
By 2 different doctors. I was told.
So not just one, just 2.
2 different doctors told me that I couldn't have babies. One was mostly just because of
like what, that you would never get pregnant at all, or that like you like please don't have babies because you can't do it.
One of them was more like, hey, like don't, you know, with blood sugars and stuff, like it's
Don't do
probably it's not safe or whatever. And then another doctor told me that diabetes and birth control didn't mix. And so, because I was on birth control, that I was never going to be able to have kids. Like, ever. Like, I wouldn't even be able to
I forgot about that. Okay.
So, after that, I saw a different doctor, and she told me that it would be harder for me to get pregnant, but that when I was ready to have kids, that she was going to be there for me. And that she
I remember
was
when
gonna
you switched
help
over. That was
me.
awesome.
Yeah. So that she was going to help me and everything, and that, you know, we were going to do, like, you know, it was going to be a lot more work or whatever, but she was going to help me, you know,
Get what you wanted.
have a baby. So then once I, like, finally...
And you guys did want a baby. It was just like, you weren't planning it just then. And
Yeah.
It was like,
Yeah. We
oh,
did.
hey.
Yeah. So he was kind of just like, oh, like...
A happy accident. It wasn't like, oh
Yeah.
crap, we're pregnant.
Uh-huh.
Which isn't bad either. Sorry,
Yeah.
not trying to knock anyone. But like,
Yeah, so we did want kids, just... At the time, we weren't, like, really ready.
let's do this right now. you
Yeah,
know?
we weren't expecting it, and so we were excited when we found out. But yeah, we were told, you know, hey, like, it's possible that you could miscarry, so be careful. And then once I kind of passed that, like, miscarriage stage or whatever, you know, they were still telling me, well, you know, he could have heart defects, or his brain might not develop right, or he could have deformities, or, you know, this and that, and he could have health problems, and so they kept, you know, I was
They kept
like,
a close eye on you.
what?
They kept like a closer eye
Yeah,
on
I had, like, I was constantly having ultrasounds done and stuff just to, like, check his growth and all that, and, like, his heart, and, you know, basically see how everything was developing. And he was fine. Everything was going great. And then they
Obviously.
told me still, like, even after that too, like, okay, well, you know, there's still the chance of a stillbirth, and then
Yeah.
my chance for getting preeclampsia was higher, and
you. He's figuring out the zipper.
and he's smart.
And good looking. Where is he? Where
I
is he?
can't even see it.
He's little.
He's 10 months old, by the way.
Yes.
So in the beginning, as far as, like, you know, with the diabetes and stuff, my blood sugar was constantly dropping. Like, I was, you know, really low all the time, and I was...
Whee! Yay! Hi.
So, I was told that the reason my blood sugar kept dropping was because I would eat, and then I would take insulin like normal, But because all the nutrients weren't going to me, a lot of it was going to him, that the insulin was more than I needed because
that makes
not
sense.
everything was going to me. Some of it was going to him as well. So I had to kind of like adjust for that. And then that was kind of another, like, every week I had to go and see my endocrinologist, and we had to make adjustments and stuff. With my insulin and as far as like how much to take for what, and so I had to take a lot less insulin in the beginning, and then I had to see him every week, and then from there I had to start taking more and more and more. I don't remember how much I was taking like in the beginning, but I know by the end of the pregnancy I was taking 1 unit for every 3 carbs. So I was taking
That's a lot more than you take now, because you take one for every 8 now.
Yeah, 1 for every 8 now. I think in the beginning I was at like 1 for every 12. And then after he was born, I went back to 1 for every 12, just because I wasn't going to need nearly as much anymore because I didn't have the big old fat baby. So
big fat baby, your butt.
So from there, like the very beginning of like the first 6 months, it was pretty smooth. It was really good. I didn't have any issues. He was looking good. He was measuring good. The first 6 months was pretty good. It went smooth, and I didn't have any issues other than like low blood sugar kind of all the time. But nothing really major. And then that's when at around 26 weeks. I started getting really sick, and this is when the whole like DK thing happened. So I would go out to lunch every Monday and Thursday with Dexter, my boyfriend.
That baby daddy.
And so we would have lunch because during his lunch break at work, and so that Monday I went to go have lunch with him, and I was really, really, really thirsty that day. It was really hot that day, and when we went to go eat, we went to Wendy's, and I got chicken nuggets, and I didn't even looked at them pretty much, and I was like, yeah. And I hadn't eaten at all that day yet, and then I just got a big thing of.
Hey, look at you, big fat baby.
Right. He's not so big and fat anymore, but he was. But I just got a huge thing of Sprite and downed the whole thing. I was so thirsty, and then I just was feeling off, and then I was like, well, I don't know if I want to go home or I wanted to go to Ross, because I was still pretty tiny at the time, and I was in between maternity clothes and regular clothes. So I wanted to go to Ross and get maternity clothes, and I ended up going, and I was shopping around and stuff, and I remember waiting in line, and I felt like I was gonna pass out. I literally, I was leaning on the pole thing.
We went to Ross.
So yeah, so then when I was in line, I remember feeling like I wanted to pass out, and I just felt super sick, I felt off. I didn't feel myself, and so. And then I remember when I finally got up to the register to check out and stuff, the lady seemed like she was rushing, she was trying to hurry up, she could tell I was
say hi, Poet. Hi, Poet. She's laughing. It's I like saying. So
I felt like she knew could tell I was about to pass out or something, so she wanted me out of there so I wouldn't pass out. And then I from there I kept debating should I drive home or should I call someone to get me, or which I should have. I ended up just driving home myself, and then I felt okay, and then just from. Are you tired? So I felt pretty okay, but then I kept my blood sugar dropped a couple times, and then I just felt really, really off. I felt really dehydrated. I felt really lethargic, And by the time Dexter got home from work that day, I was like, something's not right. Like, I think I need to go to the emergency room because I was not feeling good. I was worried about him. About 2 days before this happened, he was pretty active. He was always kicking, and about 2 days before this happened, like, I didn't feel him move at all.
I remember you were upset about that.
I was like freaking out. I was really nervous about that. And then the next day,
especially since they had told you, like, oh yeah, stuff's gonna happen to him.
Yeah. So I was freaking out. I was really worried about that. And then, we finally kind of got him like kicking again, but he still like wasn't as active as he normally was. And so, I wanted.
We're all tired here. Tell that, Mama.
Do you want down? What do you want?
It's like, I want to stare at myself.
So, anyways, just like for mine and his safety, I was like, we should probably go get checked. So we went to one of the hospitals around here, one of the emergency rooms, and they were like, okay, well, we don't know if we need to send her to L&D or if we can see her here in the emergency room. So then they had to call labor and delivery and like talk to them, and then they said that to get me checked in and everything down there, they were going to send someone from labor and delivery down to put me on like little monitor things and check his heart rate and check to see if I was having contractions. And so they had me all checked in, and they did lab work. So they took some blood and
oops, I've been cutting on you. Did I cut off your face? I'm sorry.
You're fine. So then they did like the blood work and like the urine sample and all that. They came back and basically told me that I had a UTI, and that was probably the reason I was feeling sick, was just because like my body was trying to fight off the infection and stuff, and being pregnant, and that was kind of just making me feel icky. I was dehydrated, so they gave me fluids through an IV. My potassium was low, so they gave me potassium through the IV. And so they did all that. And then I felt nauseous, and so they gave me some Zofran, and I was still like.
And normally that helps you, right?
Yeah. So that normally, like when I have the stomach flu or whatever, they give me Zofran, and I'm fine. Like, it's no big deal. And then I was still like feeling nauseous after that. So they had the labor and delivery people were like checking like his heartbeat and like contractions and stuff. They said that I was having contractions, but they didn't think that, or they weren't sure if I was in labor or not. They were saying that I was probably just getting like irritability or from the infection.
Okay.
And so they gave me some medicine to stop the contractions. They never stopped. But they basically said, he's not coming today. We did what we could, go home.
Right.
So they sent me home. I had like the worst night ever trying to sleep. I was really
obviously you're gonna be upset and uncomfortable and like.
So then the next day I started throwing up. I just was progressively getting worse and worse. And so I had Dexter and my mom take me to the ER again because they said that if I still wasn't feeling better, if I was getting worse, to bring me back. So because I was getting worse, they brought me back. They saw me at L&D first this time, said that I was still having contractions, said that, there's nothing we can do. We need to send you back down to the emergency room. So because I had already been checked in and everything, they were like, oh, we're just going to send you down in a wheelchair, and that's going to be almost the same as like sending you in an ambulance. Like they'll get to you quicker. Okay. And so they brought me down in a wheelchair. They looked at the lady at the front desk or whatever and said, okay, like we're leaving her here with you guys now. And we sat and we waited and we waited and we waited for like 2 hours. And they were calling people in, and people were leaving, and they were calling more people in, and we were just sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting. So my mom asked them, like, why hasn't she been called in yet? They said that they were going to get to her really quick. And then they said, oh, well, she's not in the system right now. like she needs to recheck in. Because
Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah, so when they had discharges from L&D, they discharged us from everything.
Awesome.
Instead of like, setting us down. No one told us, no one said that, hey, like,
how are you supposed to know that?
And after the lady, like the nurse told her, okay, she's in your care now, like if we weren't in the system and we had to get rechecked in, like,
you should have said something.
It would have been nice to know, like we needed to get
someone should have said something.
So we finally got checked in, and they kept asking me, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much pain are you in? And I was in a lot of pain at that point, and so they finally got me checked in. I told them that, I had tested my ketones at home and that they were really, really high. They said, oh yeah, well, you had ketones yesterday too. But
gee, thanks for letting us know.
They didn't tell me that. And, and during this whole process, like, my blood sugars had, other than dropping once, they had been good.
Yeah, and ketones is a serious thing that they should have let you know about, right?
Yeah, so
like, no matter what.
They didn't tell me that I had ketones. They were kind of just like, oh, well, yeah, you had them yesterday too.
Yay.
And I'm like, I don't know how to like treat it if my blood sugar's not going up high because I can't take insulin. I'm trying to drink water, but I feel sick. I don't know if they're gonna affect him. And so, they kind of just like it was whatever. They gave me more fluids and stuff through IVs and more potassium and more Zofran, but I was still really nauseous. I was still in pain. My mom had asked them to test to see if I had pancreatitis because of the pain that I was having and where I was having it.
So they weren't even going to test it, but she asked for it.
She asked them. They said that they did test and that it came back negative. It was nothing. And then I asked them to test to see if it was DKA. They said, no, it's not DKA.
Even though you already had ketones.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were really high. And so they sent me home again, and we didn't even leave the parking lot, and I was throwing up again. And this was after they gave me some Zofran. And so I went home, and again, I couldn't sleep. I was really uncomfortable. I was in a lot of pain. The next day, I was throwing up like constantly. I had tried freezing Gatorade and trying to like kind of eat it like as a popsicle, and even that would make me throw up. I couldn't even hold down like a sip of water.
Didn't you get to the point where you couldn't even lift your head or something?
Yeah. So I was like, I would be laying down and I'd move my head like that, like literally that much, like the tiniest little bit, and this really sharp pain would just shoot through me like right here, and it hurt so bad. And then it would linger, and then like I'd finally get comfortable and it'd go away, but then I'd like again move my head just a little tiny bit, and it was just like this awful pain. And so then that was just all day. I was in pain, I was sick, I was uncomfortable, and I got to the point where I was like breathing weird, like I was like would take like a breath in and then breathe out really hard, and then take a breath in and breathe out really hard. And so we were like, and I couldn't control it. Like
what's that called?
Kuzma breathing. So I couldn't control it. Like I was like, what's happening? What's going on? And then I remember Dexter like giving me this weird look when I started doing that. Like, why are you breathing?
What are you doing?
Like, what's happening? And I told them, I was like, I can't control this. Like, I don't know why I'm breathing like this. And I was saying that I needed to be seen again, but I didn't want to go back to the hospital because they kept brushing everything off.
Yeah.
And, they basically told me, oh, it's just like a stomach bug or whatever, but I felt
you didn't want to go because they were just going to send you away.
Yeah, so I didn't want to be seen just for them to send me home again. And then I was so uncomfortable and I was in so much pain that I didn't want to sit in the car. I didn't want to sit in the waiting room for hours while I waited for them to call me in, like, because I couldn't get comfortable. I was in so much pain. And so my mom decided that she was going to call 911. And so the paramedics got there and they like noticed how I was breathing and everything. They said that I was doing that cruise-small breathing. They asked if I was going to the bathroom a lot, and I said yes. And so then they told us that, my body was first trying to get rid of the ketones by peeing a lot, and then once that wasn't working, that it was trying to get rid of the ketones by vomiting, and then once that wasn't helping, that my body was trying to get rid of the ketones by breathing, by the Kuzma breathing. And then So they took me to a different hospital, a different emergency room. And within 10 minutes of being at that emergency room, they were admitting me into the ICU and said that I was in DKA. And
You were finally getting taken care
yeah,
of.
so I was finally getting the help that I needed, and like I was like, hey, yeah, you know, like it was DKA, you know.
Yeah.
We kind of had a feeling, and we're told no, it's not at one hospital, and then told yes, it was at another. So then I remember like laying in the ER because they had to like get everything ready in the ICU for me first before they could move me, and so I had to sit in like the actual like emergency room, like little bed thing. For a bit, and then because Mom and Dexter had to drive separately, they were out like in the waiting room, so it was just me. Like, and then I couldn't even like get myself undressed to put on like the hospital gown, and so I remember it was a male nurse too, and I was like, I need help, like I cannot get undressed, and he was like, okay, he's like, I'll help you, and he's like, but you need to kind of try and help me like cover up and like all that stuff, and like. So he had to help me get undressed and help me get the hospital gown on and everything because I could barely move. I felt so sick. I was so uncomfortable. And then I also had like an IV in already that they put in the ambulance.
Things harder, especially when you're already struggling.
I was just like, I don't know, like I just need you to do this for me because I can't.
And you're not someone who would just be like, hey, dress me.
Yeah, so
do this for me. I can do it myself, but do it for me.
He had to help me because then my mom and Dexter weren't allowed back there at that point, and so they had already said like, you know, we're gonna admit you before my mom and Dexter even knew what was going on. And so by the time they got back there, I told them like, hey, you know, I'm getting sent to the ICU, like it's DKA, and so then they had to do like a chest x-ray, I don't remember why, and they had to do like all these different like blood tests, and like they had to at one point do like a needle in like one of the arteries in my arm. Like they had to like draw out for a specific test. I don't remember what it was for, but I remember it hurt so bad. And so I like remember like, because there were so many doctors and nurses in there at one time, they were all doing different tests, and I was just laying there, and like they were doing that, and I remember screaming because I was in so much pain, and I was like, and like the guy that was doing it was like literally like right here by my ear while I'm screaming, and I kept telling him, I'm sorry, and he's like, it's fine, he's like, I understand, you're uncomfortable, like you're in pain. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to scream in your ear. He's like, you're fine, it's okay.
I'm glad he was so understanding.
Yeah, so he was really sweet. And then I remember like having to lay back at one point, and the lights were hurting my head so bad. Like I think it was one of the worst headaches I have ever had, and like the lights were just making it worse. And I remember like complaining about that, and like I couldn't like keep my eyes closed because it still like it hurt. And so Dexter like had his hand like over my eyes and like over my face.
He's so good.
Trying to block the light. He's like, it's okay, like does this make it better? And I was like, a little bit. And like so then they had to put like 2 more IVs in me. So I had one in each hand and then one in like my arm, and then they
He's like, no.
so then they finally were able to bring me to the ICU, and then from there like a lot of it's just like a blur. I don't really remember a whole lot.
You were like out of it.
Yeah, and then but I do remember them at one point coming in and saying like, by the way, she has pancreatitis too.
Yay.
And so which
you had asked to be tested for.
The first hospital said, oh no you don't, or whatever, and then they told me there, DKA and pancreatitis. So that's why I was having all that pain and why I couldn't move. And so then we had an issue with one doctor there as well. He came in, and I remember because I was so out of it, I remember hearing this conversation. I don't remember what the doctor looks like. I don't remember seeing anything. I don't remember seeing my mom. But I remember hearing him basically telling my mom that it was our fault because we didn't follow up with my doctor after the first ER visit. When I tried calling them. They didn't answer. I left a message. And this was my OB, by the way, so it's not even like she really could have
She couldn't do anything.
done anything to prevent it. And then even like when I told my endocrinologist everything after, he even said, we couldn't have done anything.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you had to have been hospitalized. You had to, you know, so he,
little easy baby.
he basically said like, oh, you know, the emergency room isn't supposed to be used in that way, or like we took advantage of the emergency room. And
I want to go back and punch all of them in the face.
Right?
Just saying.
So I was like, well, what are we supposed to do? You know, like I was sick, my blood sugar was high, I couldn't take insulin to get rid of these ketones.
You were in an emergency situation.
Yeah,
Come on
I couldn't
now.
keep water down. Like, what was I supposed to do? And he's like, well, it's not supposed to be used that way. Like, this could have been prevented if you had followed up with her doctor and blah, blah, blah. And my mom tried to explain to him, you know, she tried calling them, but because she was so out of it all day, when they called her back, she was asleep. Like, she didn't know they called. By the time she saw that, they had already closed. What was she supposed to do? You know, and even, like, again, if we had followed up,
There's nothing they could have done.
any of them could have done. And so, then again, like everything, I remember like bits and pieces of like family coming to visit, and I remember seeing them for like a split second and then just being passed out. And then I remember
She wants to be in the shot.
my
Peekaboo Melody.
So then my brother came to visit, and his friend came with them, and I remember they had like a cool like wet cloth on my forehead, and like it kept sliding down in my eyes, and his friend being like, I'm just gonna move it up so it's not in your eyes, and like I remember finally kind of starting to get better and like being able to kind of joke around with the nurses a little bit and like talk, and I wasn't allowed to drink any water. I wasn't allowed to eat, and which I didn't want to because I felt so sick.
Right.
So I was still in a lot of pain, but I wanted water. I was so thirsty, and the only time I was ever able to have any water was when they were giving me my prenatal vitamin. I was able to have like a couple sips, but other than that, like I wasn't allowed to drink water, and I was so thirsty. And then I remember I was kind of finally feeling well enough to like sit up a little bit, and so they got me out of bed for like a second because I was on like very, very strict bed rest. Like I couldn't even go to the bathroom. Like
Dang.
yeah. So
Did you have like a catheter and all
I
that?
had a catheter, and then
That's rough.
I hadn't been eating, so I didn't have any like.
You didn't have to go.
So
If you know what we mean.
So I had the catheter in, and then like they got me up, and they had me sit in like a folding chair for a little bit so they could change like my bed sheets, and then I was able to kind of wash up a little bit, which felt so good. I was so happy, and then they let me like brush my teeth and like and I remember I had pictures of that too, and like I even like posted it on Facebook. Like it's kind of weird like to post a picture of me brushing my teeth on Facebook, but it was like
That's a
such
big thing for you.
huge step like during that time because I couldn't move, and then you know being able to like brush my own teeth, like you know it was so great. And then they like gave me this like weird like it looked like a shower cap, but it had shampoo in it, so my mom put that on me and was able to wash my hair. And,
I remember the picture where she had like braided it and everything for
so
you.
she like did my hair and everything for me, and that you know it was just it felt so like nice like to finally like get cleaned up and move even just a little bit. And then my cousin came in like during that time, like when I was like brushing my teeth and stuff, and she was like, she's sitting up, and like but then it was like the next day I was like maybe like I shouldn't have done that, like, but I mean they said it was okay, but I was like
That was a big deal for you.
yeah, I was exhausted the next day, and then from there they sent me to Sharp Memorial in San Diego, which I went to their ICU because I finally was like stable enough for them to transport me, and so I was at their ICU for a little over 24 hours, and then they finally like they took the catheter out and everything, and I was able to get up and go to the bathroom.
Musical stylings ability. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Wasn't ready for my clothes then.
So, but then, even then, I was so tired. I was still in a lot of pain. They told me that day that I was allowed to drink water finally and eat.
Thank goodness.
And I was so happy to drink water, but I was like, I can't eat. Like, I
You,
felt
of course, was scared of it and all of that.
so sick. And then the next day I was finally like, okay. And I was like, okay, like I'm kind of ready to eat. But I was still so exhausted and so drained. Like my mom had to feed me. And so the only thing I felt comfortable eating was yogurt. So
Just
my
put
mom
off your head, I'm sorry.
It's okay. So my mom was like spoon feeding me yogurt while I was just like laying there in bed because I was so like in so much pain still and so exhausted. And then later on that day, I was transported from Sharp Memorial to Sharp Mary Birch, which again was an amazing hospital. Everyone there was like so wonderful.
They gave you like the best treatment
all
whole
the
pregnancy
and everything. And then during this whole time too, they still had me on like the monitors to check stopped.
the whole rest of your pregnancy,
The
right?
whole rest of my pregnancy, I had the contractions, and then they didn't exactly know 100% what was going on. They thought he might have been born like during this whole thing when I was only 26, 27 weeks at the time. And then they like, you know, just kept an eye on him, and I was still on IVs the whole time. And I was finally able to just, you know, only get up to go to the bathroom. That was the only time I was ever able to get up. And so it got exhausting because I was at Mary Birch for, I want to say like 5 or 6 days. And so just like being cooped up in this little tiny room, and like all I was able to do was watch TV. Like I couldn't, you know, people came to visit, which was nice. And so
you were like a vegetable.
But like I wanted to get up, I wanted to move, I wanted to walk. And so then by the time I was able to go home, like my legs were shaking so bad. My legs had gotten so skinny. I had lost like 5 to 8 pounds during this whole process.
Yeah. That's a lot for you. And being pregnant and everything, you know, like.
Yeah, so I, you know, like my legs were so shaky, and like when I was walking to the car, I had to keep taking breaks because
you were weak from everything.
Yeah, I hadn't been walking, and I was just still really weak. And then the doctor that had discharged me, I remember like we were talking about that one doctor at the previous hospital that had said, you know, that it was our fault or whatever. And he was like, no, like there's nothing anyone could have done to prevent this, really. He was like, you know, lots of people go into DKA from not taking care of themselves, from high blood sugar, high A1C, all this stuff. He was all, that clearly was not the case with you. He was all, your A1C looks good, your blood sugars have looked good. You know, he's like, it's the infection, you know, it took a toll, and, you know, there's nothing you could have done to prevent that. He was all, this was in no way your fault. And then just like a little side story, there was an endocrinologist at the hospital that would take care of me whenever I was there. And I was there like over 4th of July. And so that morning he came into my room and he had like a little American flag. He was like, happy 4th of July. And like, you know, he's like, I'm sorry you can't be like celebrating or whatever. And like, he's like, but I got you this to like cheer you up and make your day brighter. And it was just like this little flag. But it was really cute. And he was awesome. He was such a good doctor. And he was one of the ones that I felt was one of the best. He like he listened and he asked how I was feeling, not even just like how I was feeling physically, but like emotionally.
Yeah.
And so like if something was bothering me or if I was upset, like he cared, like he wanted to know, and when I told him, he would do something about it. So I was sent home. And then I was afraid to go to sleep that night because it was scary. It was weird being home. I was like, what if something happens, or, you know. So it was really, really weird being back home. But I was like so happy to be out of the hospital. And then I went back to see my OB, and I told her everything that happened. Which she was kind of aware because she came and saw me at when I was in the ICU at the first hospital. So she came and saw me then, and like, so she had an idea of what was going on, but I like updated her and everything, and she basically said, you know, you were such a fragile diabetic, I don't feel comfortable taking care of you from this point on. She was like, I'm going to transfer your care over to San Diego, so the San Diego Perinatal Center, and then I had an appointment a few days later again, and they admitted me again because my sugars were still kind of high. So then I was there for another 6 days, but this time luckily I wasn't on bed rest. I was able to walk and like get out of the room, and they had like little classes, like art classes and stuff, and so I was able to do that. And this was 11 days after I was released, so I was in the hospital, home for 11 days, and then I was readmitted. And then I did a lot of like crocheting and stuff during that time. And then I was sent home again, and I was home for a good month this time. We were able to have our baby shower and everything, and like things were looking good. And then I started having to have my NSTs, my non-stress tests. So it was basically, just being on the monitors to check contractions and his heart rate and his movement and all that. So I had to drive all the way out to San Diego, which is an hour away from where we live. So I had to drive out there twice a week to get these done. And then at one of them, they had noticed that my sugars were kind of high again. And so I was hospitalized again for about 3 or 4 days. And then during this hospital visit, I had turned, so it was 34 weeks while I was there. And so they gave me this little certificate, oh hey, milestone. It was really cute. And so then I was supposed to be induced at 38 weeks, and they wanted to just keep me there the rest of the pregnancy, and I was like, that's a long time. I don't
after you'd already been there for so long.
Yeah. So it was a good 3.5, 4 weeks that they wanted to keep me, and I was like, no, I do not want to stay that long and stuff. And they were like, well, because the endocrinologist was the one that had suggested it first. He was saying, I would really rather you just stay here the rest of your pregnancy. And I was like, And so then the OB that was taking care of me came in, and she's also, I talked to Dr. Holdy, and he said that he wants to keep you here. And I was like, I really, really don't want to stay, pretty much a month. I was like, I really, and she was like, well, it's not an unreasonable request from us. She was all, but we don't want to force you to stay here if you don't want to, if you're uncomfortable or whatever. She was like, but we need to make a deal with each other that if you do get hospitalized again before you deliver, that you are going to stay here until you are ready to have him. I was like, okay, I can agree to that. But, so then I did good. I was getting a little frustrated because I was still having issues kind of keeping my sugars under control because they kept kind of going on the higher side, and I would get emotional over it, and I was like, just take me back to the hospital.
Final stage.
But, so then, during my last, so I had what I thought was my last NST, and then I was going to have a week gap of nothing, just a regular OB check, and then I was supposed to be induced the next week. And so I had my last NST, and then I went to my OB check, because I had them on Tuesdays and Fridays. And then my last OB check was on a Wednesday. It was the following Wednesday, and she asked me, okay, so are you getting, because it was a doctor I hadn't even really seen before, and she was like, well, have you been getting, the NSTs done and all that stuff? And I was like, yeah, I had my last one on Friday. She was all, you're not getting induced until Monday night, Tuesday morning, Val. And I was like, yeah, I know, but they didn't schedule any more after that, so I figured that was my last one. She was all, you need to keep getting them done until you deliver. And so then I was so mad.
Yeah,
because I was no, I don't want to drive out here more than I have to, and so I was really, really mad. And then they sent me upstairs that day to get one done since I was already there. And normally they don't do them on Wednesdays, but they had to make an exception for me to get it done. And so then I remember sitting there, and he was just going crazy in my stomach, and me and Dexter were like, he's mad about it too, he doesn't want to be here either.
That was funny.
And then that Friday, it was my last one, and I was like, oh, I'm not even supposed to be here or whatever. And at this point I was 37 weeks 5 days. And I went and I sat down, and I sat for 20 minutes, and the nurse ripped the paper off the little thing, so it showed his movement and contractions and all that stuff. And then she went and showed it to the doctor that was in charge that day. And I could overhear them talking, and I heard her saying well, I don't know anything about her, what, she's what's been going on. And so she came back, and she was like, well, we need to put you on for another 20 minutes. And I was like, oh, okay, like, that's weird. And then I was, again, really annoyed at that point, too, because I wanted to go home. I wasn't supposed to be there. And it had happened before where they had to keep me on an additional 20 minutes, but it was because he was moving too much. And so I was thinking, you know, okay, he was probably just really active again. And so I texted Dexter because he wasn't even allowed back there with me. I texted him. He was in the waiting room. I was like, they need to keep me on another 20 minutes. And he was like, oh, I just want to get out of here. And I was like, yeah, I know. Like, I'm hungry, and I want some of that soup you made last night. I'm like, so then I'm sitting there, and I'm waiting. And then after the 20 minutes, she ripped the thing off again and went back. And I'm sitting there, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting. And then she comes back, and she's like, okay, well, we're going to send you over to Mary Birch again because you're probably going to deliver today. And so then at this point, I start freaking out because I'm like, I'm not supposed to be induced for another, like, 4 or 5 days. And, you know, like, what's going on?
That was the day that we were supposed to get together,
Yeah.
too. We were going to take, like, the best friend and baby bump photos.
Yep. And so I was like, okay, like, what's going on? And she was like, okay, like, I'm going to have you put your stuff in this room or whatever, and the doctor's going to come and talk to you. And I still hadn't even met this doctor. I had so many different ones taking care of me, like, just from the same group. But I hadn't met this specific one, and she's like, she's gonna come and talk to you, and blah, blah, blah. I was like, can I at least go grab, like, my boyfriend, because he's out in the waiting room, I don't know what's going on, or whatever. She's like, yeah, go get him really quick. And so then I went, and he, like, gets up thinking we're gonna leave, and I was like, no, like, you need to come back here with me. And we go back, and he was all, is everything okay? And I was like, I don't know, like, I don't know what's happening. I was like, they just said that I'm going to the hospital, we might have him today. And he was like, oh, like, what's happening? I was like, I don't know.
No one's told me anything.
So I'm, like, shaking at this point because it was so unexpected. I'm freaking out. I'm worried about him. I don't know what's going on. And then I, like, bumped into the doctor, like, while I was heading back to the room where I put my stuff. And she, like, shook my hand. She was like, hi, I'm Dr. Williams, or I think that was her name. Yeah, Dr. Williams. And she's like, I'm actually going to send you over on that side of the building or whatever. We're going to do another ultrasound really quick. And that was the other thing, that twice a week before they would do the actual NST, they would do an ultrasound to check my fluid level and all that stuff. So I had already had one done that day. They needed to do an additional one to check his size and everything because they were worried about him getting too big. And so then they went back, and, like, I was, like, shivering while they're doing this ultrasound, and I'm like, Dexter's, like, holding my hand because he knows I'm freaking out. And I'm like, I was like, I don't know, like, what's going on. And then, so they finished the ultrasound. They sent me to the room. The doctor came in, and she was like, okay, so, like, here's the deal. You know, I noticed on your paper, like, your slip, that every time you had a contraction, his heart rate would drop. So I really want to get him out ASAP. She's like, I'm going to check to see how dilated you are, and then we'll either do a C-section or we'll induce you depending on how dilated you are. She's like, honestly, though, I kind of just want to do a C-section. She's like, with your diabetes, I don't want you going 2 days without eating. I'm worried that you're not going to make it through the stress of labor. I'm worried that the baby's not going to make it through the stress of labor. She's like, I really don't want to put that on anyone. She's like, so we're more than likely going to go with the C-section regardless. She's like, but I'm going to check just in case. And she checked. I wasn't dilated at all. So she was like, okay, so what we're going to do is, she's like, I'm going to call Dr. Donishman, who's the perinatologist on call at the hospital right now, and he's going to do your C-section, and we're going to send you over there. And so I'm, like, shaking and freaking out. I'm texting my parents, and I'm like, he's going to be here today, like,
Get your booty over here.
And my dad was at work, and they were like, wait, what? Like, what's going on? And I was like, well, here's what's happening. And then, so then my dad had to drive from work. He works almost an hour away, too. So he had to drive home, get my mom, and then drive to San Diego. And then I'm, like, texting my brother, and I was like, I'm freaking out. And he's like, don't, it's going to be okay. And, like, he's all excited because his nephew's coming, and, like, they sent us over to the hospital, and right when we walked in, Dr. Donishman, who had taken care of me at, like, some of my previous hospital visit stuff, he was standing there, and he remembered us, and he, like, called us out by name. He's like, Rachel, Dexter. He's like, it's so good to see you guys again. And, like, he gave us both a hug. He's like, I know you're scared. I know you're worried. He's like, I'm going to get your baby out safely for you. Everything's going to be okay. He's like, I'm not going to let anything bad happen. And, like... Yeah. You know, so he was really comforting and really sweet. And so then we got checked in and everything, I had to wait in like the like waiting room section of L&D with all like the other like family members and stuff that are waiting for like their, you know, babies to come. And so I'm sitting there and I'm waiting, and then they called me back, and they got me all prepped, and I had to drink like this like weird like, I don't even know what it was. They said it was like to help me, like to keep me from getting sick, like during the surgery and stuff.
Okay, anti-nausea kind of.
Yeah, I don't know. It was weird. It was like in this like brown thing. I had to drink it. It was really, really gross. And then they had to like get an IV in me and all this stuff, and get like an insulin drip going, and like, you know, fluids and all that. And then my parents showed up, and they're all excited and like freaking out. I'm like, I'm so nervous. And then I remember like wanting to cry, and like Dexter like holding me, and he's like, "You were so strong. Like, you've been through so much, and you've been taking such good care of yourself and the baby." And like, he's like, "You're one of the strongest people I know, and I know you're gonna get through this, and I know you're gonna be okay, and you're gonna do great." And so then we sat and we waited in the L&D room for a little bit, and then you know, Dr. Donishman came in again and talked and was like, "Okay, so we're gonna do the surgery at this time, like right after I do another one." And then so it was still like a couple hours, so like my appointment was in the morning, and then they wanted to start my surgery at 1:45, and then they were running a little bit behind, so it ended up being a little bit later. And then the anesthesiologist came in, and his name was Dr. Breen, and he was like one of the most amazing parts of this whole experience. He was so wonderful, and he came in and he explained everything he was going to do. And you know, he like joked around with me and asked like, you know, what was the last thing I ate? And I was like, oh, it was a Pop-Tart or whatever, because we just stopped at the gas station that morning to grab something quick. And he was all, "That's weird." He was all, "Pop-Tart's not part of my diabetic diet." And like, he was like joking around and messing around with me, but he was so comforting too, and like explained like everything that he was gonna do. And then they were like, "Okay, like it's time, like we're gonna go head over to the OR." And like Dexter had to put his like weird like gown thing on, and like his like hat thing,
like what you
and,
see in the movies.
Yeah. And so they told him to make sure he had his phone out, because once he was in his gown, he couldn't unzip it again to like get anything, so he had to have his phone out so he could take pictures. And then we walked down to the OR. They had to have Dexter go and like wait in this other little waiting area, and then they brought me into the OR. And then as soon as I walked in, I started bawling because I was freaking out. And then, like, I didn't have Dexter, who was, like, my main source of comfort, like, there with me while I'm getting prepped. When I was thinking that I was going to have him, like, naturally, I was like, I don't even want an epidural, because I didn't want needles in my back and, like, all this stuff. And so,
which is not your plan at all.
Yeah, so then they were, like, going to do a spinal, and so that's what I was really, really freaking out about. And so I was, like, I started crying, and I was like, I can't. And then, I like sat down, and like all the nurses and stuff were like, "It's okay, like you're gonna meet your baby soon," and like they were really comforting. And then
you were all up in your head for a bit.
Yeah, Dr. Green told me, he was like, "Yeah," he's like, "they injected a little something into your IV to help you calm down a bit." I was like, okay, like that's cool. And so that did, it helped me relax. And then like I had to like get in like this weird like position. They were like, "You need to arch your back like a cat." And so I had to like do that, and then like I was like holding on to the nurse that had like was there like helping me get prepped and everything, and like so I was like literally squeezing her, and she was like holding on to me and kind of like rubbing like my upper back and stuff while they were doing the spinal. And then from there, like I felt my feet start getting tingly, and then my legs, and then it just slowly like up to my chest, like I couldn't feel anything. And then I was like laying there and I was waiting, and then I like Dr. Breen was like looking at me and talking, and he was like, "Do you feel that?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "Okay." He's like, I was rubbing your stomach with ice." He's also like the same like thing in your body or whatever that can sense hot and cold is the same thing that's going to determine pain. So because you didn't feel the cold, then we know that
that's good.
You're ready to, you know, have surgery. And so then they finally brought Dexter in, and I was like okay, like
you can breathe.
I was like, he's here. So I was like laying there, and like Dr. Breen was talking to me and Dexter, and like I could feel like the pulling and the tugging, and like it was the weirdest feeling. And then I remember hearing them say, "Okay, here he comes," and then they were like, "Oh wait," and then I like see them and they were like pushing, and I could feel them pushing on like my upper abdomen, and
for all those people saying that you're not giving birth, your baby still comes out, you're still giving birth.
Yeah, so they like pushed on, and then they finally like they brought him out, and then they lifted up the curtain so I could see him, and Dr. Donishman was like holding him and smiling while Dexter was taking pictures, and Dexter, I could hear Dexter going, "Do you hear him? Do you hear him? Can you see him?" And like Poet's crying, and Dexter's crying.
Right.
Like, he still denies to this day, but
of
I
course.
saw him, and
you were there.
Yeah. So then from there, Dexter had to go with Poet, and they, you know, I was able to give him a kiss and stuff, and like kind of like touch him, like take pictures.
There's only so much you could do at first.
And then I wasn't able to hold him until I want to say almost an hour and a half, 2 hours after he was born.
Oh, man.
So
I can't imagine that.
Yeah, I had to wait because then like he went. Dexter was able to hold him at least.
Yeah.
So that made up for it. That was okay.
Yeah.
So then they took them out. They had to take him to like a little nursery thing, and then to like monitor him and check his blood sugars and stuff and make sure that he wasn't low.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were finishing up like cleaning me out and like stitching me up and all that stuff, and like Dr. Green came and he sat where Dexter was sitting, and he was holding my hand, and like, you know, he was like rubbing my arm and stuff, and I was like, "You're doing so good," and he just kept talking to me, and like, you know, made sure I was comfortable and getting my mind off of like the surgery itself, and like he was just so wonderful. And then they like, it was really cool because they like inflated like this almost like air mattress thing, and then like they were able to move me from like the surgical table to like a gurney with just like one hand, like they were like floated almost, and they just like moved me over. It's like, okay. So then they brought me into recovery, and then I was in recovery for a little while, and then I was finally able to hold Poet. We were able to do skin to skin, and I tried breastfeeding and all that stuff, which he was a little punk and wanted nothing to do with.
You had your struggles from the get-go.
Yeah. He like wanted nothing. And I just figured like, okay, maybe he's just like not hungry, but like every time I tried to breastfeed him.
Yeah, you gave a really, really good try. Like you kept trying to.
Yeah. He just didn't want to open his mouth. It was weird.
You said he has a bit of a lip tie, right?
A tongue tie.
Tongue tie, okay.
Yeah. So, but then they said that had nothing to do with it, that it wasn't even that bad.
No, it really does.
Like,
yeah, it affects it really bad.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just all kind of information that I wish I would have had. But
yeah.
So then from there, I was sent up to like the mother baby unit and stuff, and we were there for 5 days. And that experience was a little bit different than my other like previous experiences at Mary Birch, because I fought with 2 nurses because they didn't want to give me insulin before I ate.
Which is complete BS.
Yeah.
Like, you know how you need to be.
Mm-hmm. And they kept saying, like, "Oh, well, you just had a baby, so we need to see, like, what your body does," and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm still diabetic regardless. Like, I'm type 1. It's not gestational. Like,
come on.
I know I need insulin. And I told them, like, what my endocrinologist, like, my actual endocrinologist said. Like, I was like, okay, like, this was what he wants me to do, like, after delivery. And they were like, no, like, we can't, I don't feel comfortable giving you insulin or whatever. I was like, I don't feel comfortable eating then.
Yeah.
I was like, if you're not going to give me insulin, then I'm not going to eat, and then we're both going to, you know, be like...
We'll be sitting ducks, you know? Like,
so,
don't play.
And then from there, I just, like, I hadn't seen Dr. Holdy, who was the endocrinologist that took care of me, like, in the hospital. I was like, why is he not helping me? Like, why is he not taking care of these things and stuff? And, like, one of the nurses was like, I don't even know who that is. And I was like, what? Like, I was so confused. And then Dexter had pointed out later, he's like, well, the reason probably is that, you know, before you were on the PSCU, the Perinatal Special Care Unit. So everybody there was a special case. They had to pay more attention. They were used to kind of seeing more diabetics there, so they all knew who Dr. Holdy was. But where this floor, it's everybody, you know, high risk, special case or not. So it is going to be a little bit of a different experience. And then,
but still,
but I remember the first time, like, the nurse, she brought me my food, and then, which I didn't eat for almost a whole day after having him, just because I wasn't hungry, and she, like, at one point came in and was like, why haven't you eaten yet? And, like, this was, like, at lunchtime, and I was like, I'm not hungry, and she didn't even give me insulin. And then at dinner, she brought my food, and I was, like, waiting, and then I called, and I was like, I'm waiting, like, on my prenatal insulin. And then the nurse was like, oh, well, I'll let your nurse know or whatever. And then she called me back again. She's like, I don't feel comfortable giving you insulin and blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, I don't feel comfortable eating. And then
Like, I know what happens. Come on.
I was like, just talk to like Dr. Donishman or Dr. Holdy or someone. Like, I don't, like one of the doctors, like, please. And then Dr. Donishman finally called and he's like, you want insulin like before you eat and stuff? I was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm not asking for a lot. Like, I'm not like, I need like 20 units of insulin or anything. I was like, I just want like 4 units for what I'm going to eat. And he was like, okay. He's like, I'll get that for you. And then, so the nurse called back again. She's like, okay, well, Dr. Donishman talked to me and he said it's okay for me to give you insulin. And so I'll bring it. And so then I'm sitting there and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. They brought dinner at around like 5 or 6 o'clock. And it was 8 o'clock. And I still hadn't eaten because I was still waiting on insulin. And then by that time, there was like a shift change. So I had a different nurse, which was my nighttime nurse. And she came in and she was like, oh, like, are you still waiting for your insulin and stuff? I was like, yeah, I am. And she was like, okay. She's like, I'll go get it for you and stuff. And she came back quick, like, and gave it to me. I was like, well, and she was like, what did you, like, get? She's like, do you need me to reheat it for you? Because I'm pretty sure your food's cold by now. I was like, yes, please. And she was amazing about it. Like, she reheated my food, no problem. And she was really sweet. And then, again, the next day it happened again. And, like, it was a different nurse, and she was telling me, like, okay, like, let's see what your body does. Like, you know, you don't know what's going to happen. I was like, I already know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
I'm going to eat, and my blood sugar is going to skyrocket because I didn't get insulin beforehand. And she's like, well, you're not pregnant anymore, and your body's going to react differently, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but I'm still, like, diabetic. And so I refused, again, to eat until I talked to Dr. Donishman, and he... you know, he like was like, okay, yeah, like, you know, get your insulin. So she gave it to me and I ate, and then she came back to do my post-meal check an hour later, and I was in range, and she looked at me and she was all, you can tell me I told you so. She was like, I know, like, you know, I should have just listened or whatever. And I was like, no, I was like, it's fine. I was like, I'm not going to rub it in your face or anything. I was like, I know, like, where you were coming from, and you know where I was coming from now, and everything's fine. It's not a big deal. And then from there, I was like, I want Dr. Holdy to take over my diabetes care of this. So I was like, I know. I was like, I told Dr. Donishman, I was like, I do trust you, and I know you know what you're doing. I was like, but I have a lot of trust in Dr. Holdy, and he's known what he's been doing from the start, and I want him to take over this part of it. And so he was like, okay. He's like, normally we don't do this, but you are asking for him, like, by name and everything. And he was like, so, you know, I'll get him for you. And then from there, he took over, and yeah, and everything was great. And now he's here, and he's healthy, and
he's almost 1.
And he's almost 1. He's had no issues with, like, his heart or anything. He was a big baby. I had him, again, 30
for like a second.
Yeah. I had him at 37 weeks, 5 days, and he was 8 pounds, 10 ounces. And now he's 10 months old, and that's like 18 pounds. So...
what about, like, post-pregnancy? What's, like, how did everything change, like, with the amount of units you have to take now that it's changed, and, like, how has that all been?
So when they had told me after I delivered to change my insulin from 1 unit for every 3 carbs to 1 unit for every 12 carbs. So because I wasn't going to be needing nearly as much as I was taking, and then from there we had to adjust a little bit more, so now I'm at the 1 for every 8. But it actually surprisingly wasn't too big of a struggle getting everything kind of under control after he was born. It was pretty easy.
Everything's been, like, on the up and up since, like, pretty stable, and everything is good, and you've been keeping a really, really good thing of it.
Yep. It's been good.
And he's fine, and no worries, we're all good.
Yep. Nothing wrong with his brain, nothing wrong with his heart, no deformities or anything. Like they said, he's having issues with his skin now, but I think that's completely unrelated.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yay! Say bye, Rachel.
Bye, Rachel.